So we talk a lot about the economic stress that's facing Brazil, rising inflation, rising unemployment, falling retail sales. What about the state, Rio specifically? What is the situation on that state's finances? How is it doing?
Yeah, so Rio is one of the states that's been most affected by the fall in oil prices. Rio is one of the oil producers, and it's also dealing with a big pension deficit that accounts for about 3/5 of the projected deficit this year. And so, really, the state's struggling to pay, public officials, struggling to pay teachers. Everyone is having to, bear the brunt of this.
Right. And I'm wondering, how does that compare to 2009 when they first won this bid, sort of marketing themselves as a flourishing economy that could handle this Olympics?
Well, yeah, in 2009, you had, thousands of people on Copacabana Beach, celebrating when it was actually awarded. You had Lula making these grand proclamations that it was Brazil's time, and now it wouldn't be seen as a second-class country. Really. Booming economy in 2010. 2009 was a very, very small recession, whereas the rest of the world just was mired in the global financial crisis. So it's really been quite the turnaround.
Well, David, I mean, all this may be the case, but to what extent will tourists or the athletes themselves even notice the problems?
Well, the big question mark right now for the events is going to be the metro. If they can finish the metro on time, that's going to make things a lot smoother. They have a very narrow window. There's been a lot of delays, and right now they're planning to open it 4 days before the games begin. Ooh. On a partial schedule. And they're still waiting on a 1 billion reais loan to finish the work. So, they say they're confident it's going to finish. 4 days is 4 days. So that's the big one. And then otherwise, people might not notice so much. A lot of these things are things that really affect residents. They'll see the bay that should have been cleaned up on their way in. They'll smell it too. And other than that, they probably won't get a real feel for it.
When was the metro supposed to have been finished in the original plan?
I don't know the exact date, but it was definitely several months ago. I was reading this report from the state auditor saying that there was supposed to be 16 months of tests before running the metro, and instead it will have 2.
So that's not good.
No.
In terms of the actual tourist money coming in, is there any hope that the influx of people coming to see the games will provide some sort of economic boost, or is that already sort of thrown off the table?
I guess it will, help out the hoteliers and stuff. That argument has been, picked apart quite a bit, that it provides this economic boom. A lot of questions about that, especially if they do have issues with traffic. Say the metro doesn't open. One thing they did during the World Cup was declare public holidays. It might help sectors that are exposed to tourists, but if the population of the city isn't working, what does that do for the balance? So I think the question of how much it helps, at least at this moment, is still there.
Well, in terms of physical infrastructure, there's certainly a lot to be desired here. But what about security? To what extent will Rio's its state of being almost broke affect security?
Yeah, well, first of all, just on the infrastructure thing, they obviously will have all this infrastructure eventually. It's more about whether the metro, for example, is going to be working for the games. Once it is done, it will be a great improvement on a roadway that's terribly clogged right now. On the security front, this year they've cut the budget for security by 1/3 because of all of the financial problems, and that's that's obviously having a big impact. A high-ranking official I spoke to said, that they still have these police with obsolete gear. The pioneering police program to occupy favelas is starting to have a backslide. You're seeing gunfights up in the hills in a way that you didn't see a couple of years ago. Crime's rising. The federal government is sending in the National Guard. And that's part of the plan. That's not as a result of the budget cuts. But once they leave, the state is still in the same financial quagmire, and it's really a question of what happens to Rio afterwards.